Hello and welcome to the NidS Show. I'm your host Nidhi Setia and we are on a journey from loneliness to light, transforming our lives together. Have you ever been told that you're too sensitive or that you think too much? Have you ever wondered if your sensitivity could actually be your superpower rather than a flaw? What if your deep thinking and sensitivity are exactly what the world needs more of, my friends, and embracing it could actually change your life? What if you could start viewing your sensitivity as a unique gift instead of a burden? Well, you are not alone in exploring this, my friend, and our guest today is not only a certified neuroencoding specialist, but also a proud advocate for highly sensitive persons, and she dedicates her work to guiding struggling moms and their sensitive children to discover the beauty and power within this sensitivity. So get ready for an inspiring conversation with Patricia FRaMa. Welcome, Patricia. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Nidhi. It's good to be here.
Welcome, welcome. So I'm very curious, and I know this term, highly sensitive persons, but I'll share that a little bit later, how I got to know about it. But I'm curious, when did you encounter this term?
For myself, it happened in 2018. So I had already, I'm an adult and I'm already a mom. And a new friend I had just become friend with introduced me to an article. And it was on highly sensitivity by Elaine Aron. She's the psychologist who coined coined the term highly sensitive. And so as I was reading the description of what it meant, like I just felt seen and understood and validated for who I was, something I had never felt in my life before. So it was actually like a live transformation, like discovery, really. And so I really kind of like just, I don't know, stumbled on it through a reading. And then, I educated myself more into it, and it just made more and more sense as I was discovering about this personality trait.
So, before you discovered this, what was your life like?
Hmm. Well, I can talk to you, in little chunks of my life. So if I go back to childhood, for example, I was labeled as the shy person, the very timid one who would not engage right away into like a new situation. I would tend to just stay behind and analyze everything. Now I know why I was doing that, because I was processing everything, making sure it was safe for me. But so that's how I would interact. I was, I'm sensing things very deeply. So as a child, for example, and a deep connection with living creatures. And I remember one time we were camping and I fished, like we were by a river, and I caught little fish and I put it in a jar, and then we brought it to the campsite. Well, I could not sleep because I was worried that this poor little fish had taken away from its family. I needed to bring it back there, right? And so I cried over this fish. And so in the morning, we had to go back to the river and so I could dump the fish back in the river and feel at peace. So things like that as a child. Now growing up as a teenager, noise noise became more of a trigger for me. And so in my home, TV was playing all the time. And so that became very disruptive for me. I couldn't concentrate when I was doing homeworks, even trying to fall asleep. TV was always on. And my dad, who's a very social person, really loved to throw parties, like social gatherings every few weeks. And for me, it was just too much, especially at the end of a day where I was attending like a high school full of like 2,000 people. It's noisy, it was loud, it's chaotic. Plus, I was taking on my friends' emotions on top of my own, trying to make sense of what this world means as a teenager. And so I was actually on overstimulated state most of the time, basically. So I was really tired as a teenager, and would prefer just to do like sports, that I'm by myself. And I didn't like team sports because it was just too much things to look around to pay attention. And so that's childhood and teenage years. And then adulthood. Well, my adult life began also with my now husband. Like we were 16 years old. We moved in together like the following year to attend college. So I learned to do life as an adult with someone. Now, the good thing is that he was more confident in himself than I was. So he became my anchor. And so with him, like I could process some really like challenging situations, just as like learning how to do groceries, right? Like you have to do that, or how to meet ends meet, every month. So this would have been very overwhelming to me by myself, but he was there to support. But all these little questions, like as a highly sensitive person, it was like, it's always like heightened, like the stress that every person goes through a stressful time when you're moving in for the first time. But me, it was like, I wouldn't sleep for days, or, like I would worry. And yeah, so everything is just heightened, like the emotions are elevated. And then I become a mom, and I'm still not aware of this trait. So I mean, it amplifies all the change my body is going through. It's like, is this normal? Like, oh, is that okay? And so I worry, and I wasn't surrounded by a good group, a good support group. So I didn't have people to validate what I was going through in my first pregnancy. So anyways, long story short, my first pregnancy was terrible. I was at a hospital, like the noise, the smells, the people walking in and out constantly. I didn't have a good experience. And when I got home 3 days later, I was completely depleted. I was empty. And when I walked into my home, the first thing that I noticed was the quietness and stillness of everything. And I just cried. And I cried for like minutes and minutes. I just had to let go of all this built-in overstimulation. So, yeah. And so when I found out about highly sensitivity, it was a game changer in my life. And it explained many of the reactions I had as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, and now as a mom. And now when one of my child is highly sensitive as well. So it's helping me to parent much differently and to actually provide him with a supportive environment. And I just enjoy seeing him thrive because I know of what that means.
So is there because I listened to a few things that you said, and I do have a lot of questions, but at some point you mentioned that you were also picking up your friends' feelings. So that kind of also made me think, is it also somewhere there is an overlap with an empath?
Yes, definitely. We tend to feel things very deeply. So not only our things, but the things outside, An example I like to give is when I'm in a room full of people and I walk in, I will catch on the energy that's going on into this room. And if there is one person who's feeling like a little bit lonely or is feeling a little bit sad, I will immediately find that person. Like I'll look at that person, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, I got to go and talk to her. That's who I am. And then most of the time I'm right. I go and I'm like, how's it going? Like, and so, yeah, so I feel things and I feel the energy. And even that's like also like the energy, like in nature, when there's a thunderstorm outside and there are lightning, I feel the heat, and even if lightning is not happening very close to me, I feel the heat of that lightning.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago, I was with a coach from work, and after a few sessions and of course observing how I am, and I'm in a leadership role, so I have the same that I'm coaching these 13, 14 people, right, that I have to take care of, and I have to also be able to make connection as a leader, because you want to lead the team, but I want to do it more out of inspiration than, pushing them. So it should be more of a pull that they want to feel like they're going towards something. So this coach noticed, and she sent me this article that I should study about it. And then when I started to read about highly sensitive person, then I was like, I recognize it. Yes, I can feel the pain of the person if they're telling and crying in front of me and they're going through something. I would think. So I really had to understand, okay, that's why I feel so much. Because I always heard growing up, she's too sensitive, she is overthinker, and even if little bit you would think less, you would have less trouble. I can't explain it. This is who I am, right? So.
Exactly. And like my dad would often, like, I would try to share my feelings, let's say with my dad, and like something to me, like as, I don't know, a 15-year-old was something very big. And my dad would answer me things like, well, don't worry, like on a scale from 1 to 10, like how bad is it? And, you won't remember it when you grow old. And I was like, you don't understand. This is like this is my emergency. This is like real to me, right?
But did you feel this because people, not able to understand you at that time when you don't know what this means? Did you also feel left out or isolated in ways and not
Yes.
understood?
Yes, absolutely. Um, if I think about my teenage years, unfortunately, most of my stories or examples are kind of like negative
Mm.
because I felt out of place most of the time. I didn't feel like I was fitting in anywhere. I tried, but I wasn't comfortable inside. It was like against me to go to that social event, or it was against me to party and go to bed late because I couldn't stay up late. I was tired. I was drained. I couldn't do the full night. So yes, I felt weird. And it was hard for me to also make friends with people because I'm picky. I want to connect with people who are sincere and honest about who they are and who are investing in me as much as I invest in them. So not everybody does that. And so, I felt um, sad, and I'd say maybe even depressed at some point because I couldn't share at home. I felt misunderstood at home, sometimes not even respected, just laughed at for my emotions, my high emotions. So I kind of retreated to myself and trying to make sense of this world by just thinking and watching TV, trying to
Yeah,
learn it.
you just whenever you're saying all this, I'm just thinking of my childhood, and I understand all the bullying and all the made fun of, like, because I
Mm,
was like that. I would quickly cry, even if when I'm angry, I would express it with cry. If I'm excited, I'm also tearing up. So
yeah.
people who are like cousins, and when they visit, they're like, "Well, she's always crying." But it's just hard to explain that I feel it multiplied. For them, it's like something said, done, okay. But for
Hmm.
me, I'm analyzing it from every angle and situation and thinking what this person is feeling and what that person is feeling. So it's all multiplied. Like you said, it was just a lot more than what usually you would feel like for a single person.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's it. And now that we understand what it means, well, I'm able to explain it, and even like to bring it to my husband and to explain that to him because he's not highly sensitive. And now we want to parent a child differently with the knowledge that we have. We've had some adjustments to make, but all for the better.
So, what kind of adjustments, just for example, now that you're aware?
Yes, well, like when okay, so it's my son. So when he's was younger and he would throw tantrums, I would just so my husband would, like lose his patience and try to like correct him right away. And I would like, stop. Let's just see what's happening here. How long has he been doing this activity? How long has he been spending energy? Maybe he's hungry and maybe he's tired. So just assessing that, like I'm talking when he was like 3 or 4. So he couldn't really voice out what his needs were, but being aware of that, it would calm us down and say, well, yeah, it makes sense. Like we've been outside for 3 hours. He hasn't had a snack yet. Like it makes sense. Or, if he's older, he's 11, we're not planning too many things, too many activities in one day. Or we're planning it so that we have a break somewhere in the day because I need to recharge, but he needs to recharge too. And like to give you an example, actually, just this week, he went snowboarding with his class for the whole day. It was a new sport for him. So he was excited. He was all in. He spent all his energy. And I mean, he had fun. He came home completely tired, but fulfilled. I sent him to school the day after, and I should have kept him home because he wasn't ready. He wasn't fully recharged. He did his day, and he, like did what, he wants to do. He wants to please. So he did the day. But at the end of the day, when I picked him up, oh, he was grumpy. And I was asking him, so what do you need? Like, do you need to eat? Do you need to sleep? And he could not answer me. He was just overstimulated. And that's what happens, and I told my husband is like, when he cannot make a decision, let him relax, let him be, stop probing him because he doesn't know. And so just give him space, cuddle with him, hug him and let him come. And so today I kept him home. I said, okay, you need a day of rest. And that's what we do. So these are things, instead of pushing him, no, it's school day, you have to go. No, we have the flexibility of being able to keep, kids at home sometimes. And so we do that. That's an example. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's also very useful to understand, because usually the first thing people would do would assume this is physical. And then they put children through a number of tests and whatnot, and then to detect there is nothing going on. And of course, because physically there is nothing wrong, it's just is it like a wiring is different in the brain, or how does it work?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I can answer all the scientific aspect of it. Although I've been attending there's an annual researchers summit, and it's very interesting because they talk about the research they're doing. And so they found that, like in 1 in 20 people, so about 20% of the population, our brain is really more reactive. So, so it reacts more intently than the average person, and they are linking that to the survival of animal species, for example. So in a herd of deer, for example, the highly sensitive deer are the ones who are constantly gazing up as they're eating grass. They're all already constantly having their ears plucked so that they're aware of the possible danger, and the other ones don't worry about that. So if you don't have high sensitive animals in the herd, well then the predator will just come and eat everybody. So it's they've made that connection that it's pretty much like a survival aspect of our development. Now it costs a lot of energy to be highly sensitive, so that's why not everybody can be highly sensitive, because it takes a lot of effort. So if everybody was like that, they say, well, we would die.
It would be chaos.
Yeah.
Then we would eat each other or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
But in the survival aspect of things too, like if you think of highly sensitive person, in like if you go to a movie, for example, a sensitive person, the first thing she does is to look out for the exits. So making sure if something happens, okay, guys, I know where to go. This is where we're going. Like we do that instinctively, okay, and then anticipate what could go wrong. Not that it's a bad thing, but that's what it is. So what if this is happening? Well, then I can intervene and I can react.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Makes
yeah,
sense. Wow. Yeah, most of the people do that they won't realize it why they are doing it, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
okay, great, interesting. So, apart from, of course, proper planning, let's say this is one of the things that you really need to keep in mind. But if, what else do you do on the side? Do you meditate, or do you have some way of processing which helps you deal with the stress or overwhelm, which is multiplied in this case? So,
Yes. Well, what I have learned to do, thanks to neuroencoding, is to actually frame myself in the morning. That's the first thing I'm going to do, and ground myself. And so I actually put into my agenda an hour and a half of alone time to myself in the morning before I show up to my family. And that's been difficult for my husband, because he wants to come and say good morning. I'm like, I'm not ready yet. I am not ready yet. Like, thank you, but I'll see you later. And so, but that's been actually very beneficial to me, just actually to ground myself. Sometimes I meditate, I do reading, prayers, and then I do a lot of writing, just to actually process all my ideas, all my thoughts. And sometimes I'll do an assessment. Okay, how am I doing mentally? How am I doing emotionally? How am I doing physically and spiritually? And I just few lines, and I'm like, okay, this is it. And also assessing my needs of the day and voicing them. That's key. If I don't voice my needs, oh boy, it's hard. Because I expect everybody to understand them, because that's how I do. I anticipate everybody's needs. And I'm like, well, everybody's going to know my needs. No, they don't. And even if I say them one day and the next day it's still the same, it's kind of forgotten. So I have to repeat, And so, so grounding myself in the morning and going for walks daily, as much as I can. I try to go outside for a walk. That's my grounding time. And I try to go away from people. I want to be surrounded by nature. I need to either touch a tree or walk by the river. Or watch birds, or I need nature.
I have an interesting question actually, and this happens with me, so I'm also curious. So when you have to go on vacation, let's say
Oh, yeah.
somebody gives you an idea, hey, let's go for a month or something. Is it like interesting or is more like a month?
Well, my first reaction would be, ooh, I don't know. No, actually, no, no, that's too much. Yeah, that's too much. I'll give you a real example that happened to us this year. So we have a good friend from high school, and he phoned us and he said, guys, I'll come over to your house for 3 weeks because we live in a ski town. And he says, okay, so I'm coming over for 3 weeks. I'll stay with you and I'll come. And it's right during Christmas time. And I'm like, 3 weeks in my home. Right. No, I don't think so. I panicked. And because I didn't know that friend very well. And what I knew from him was that he was a messy person. He would just not pick up after himself. And so I was very worried that he would come and just disrupt everything in my home. And so thankfully he was open. And I also prepped myself. I'm like, okay, let's be open. Let's be open minded. With love. But on the first day he was here, we set the things straight. And he said, okay, you let me know, Patricia, if I'm stepping over boundaries, if I'm too messy. And we actually, Nidhi, had a good 3 weeks. It was good to have him in the house. It brought a different energy because I opened my mind to it, So to that 1 month trip, I would have to think and ask many questions, and I would have to research, and I would have to, if you tell me we're going for a month and I have my own room, and I think I'm okay, But if you're telling me we're going in a month and we're sharing bunk beds, ain't happening. Ain't happening.
With me, it happens like if I'm out for a trip for, let's say, 7 days, I start to miss my bed, my home, my room. I just have that feeling that
Yes.
something is off, right? I think because when we are out on vacation, we have so much to do. We have planned things, and it's also exhausting. It's really not rejuvenating unless I'm just on the beach whole day.
Or unless like in my case, unless I know where I'm going. If I know where I'm going, I can already look forward to it and relax and get there relaxed. But it is stressful. Like just taking the plane is stressful to me because being in the airport. And so, no, me too. Like, I plan and I want to know as many details as possible to lower my stress level. And there's nothing like home because it's a predictable and safe environment, right? But it's also good to take ourselves, outside of the comfort zone, to explore, but we can do it by controlling as many aspects as we can and be open to the unexpected.
Yeah, right. And sometimes I think, especially when I'm traveling, I will even plan the routes, like which cab or what kind of service is there, and just so that I'm in control, let's say, because there are always possibility of things that can happen, right? And
Exactly.
I think with neuroencoding or meditation, or I chant personally. So what usually is different is now that you have a higher bandwidth to process. So if I'm low on chanting, let's say, that battery, so I'm kind of a short fuse. But if I
Yeah.
had chanted enough, I would have better capacity to handle some surprises, let's say, along the way.
Yeah, that's it. And I've learned tools to do that too. Like the stop technique is one that I've used to help me like lower my anxiety level and to program myself to say, well, no, that's okay, and I've learned to talk to myself more in a positive way. Because that's the thing. When I actually learned about highly sensitivity, at first it felt a burden to me. It was freeing, but it also was burdening because I'm like, oh no, like I'm so different. And now I have to push for people to get to understand me, right? But as I came to accept it and to embrace it, well, people are seeing it, and I'm more at peace with it. So I'm able to share it with joy, and that's why I want to help highly sensitive moms get to that place too, so that they can be shining on their children and have like a thriving tribe.
Yeah. So if you were to guide our viewers, like what would be the top three things to look for someone to figure out if they're highly sensitive? Are there online tests they can take, or
Yes, well, I would point them out to Elaine Aaron's website, and I think we can put the description in your show notes. But that's where she has like a self test. There's one for adults and there's one for children, and I know they were working to changing the questions because they're trying to refine it, just so that it's not so linear of a description. So I would start by, yes, definitely do that and read on the topic and educate yourselves on it. There are lots of resources, for sure. And then afterward is maybe to have like an introspection, on like what was, like, looking back on your life, what was the trigger, like what triggered you the most and why would that trigger you? And so once you discover the triggers, and then you can look forward and say, okay, well, this is the reason why. For my case, it was noise. So what's my strategy? How can I how can I cope this noise trigger? Well, I got myself earplugs, like custom earplugs. And so I wear them constantly. If I wake up in the morning, I want to be in my bubble, I just put those on. I'm on a plane, I plug my ears. Like, so that's one way to like block some input. And so learning about your triggers, I think, would be the second thing. And then the third thing would be to embrace it and to learn how to use it to bring good into the world. Like in an organization like you, because you see things, you analyze problems differently. So you're actually a very good asset to your team, because most people will see a problem a certain way, but then you'll have that solution. And then what happens most of the time, unless you become confident, is that you don't talk about this solution because you're afraid. But if you are courageous enough, if you build that courage to speak up your different idea, well, it can spark change and it can take, like you team in a different direction. So I would say, learn it, find your triggers, and then embrace it.
Yeah, and you touched it a little bit because I was also thinking the same. Most of the time when we see or we find out something different, it can be felt like a weakness. And I personally started to feel that's a strength because it makes me more connected to people. I can feel them. That means that I understand them better than somebody who is, I don't know, a boss figure and who's just bossing you around or just giving you orders. For me, it's always the approach like other way around. Okay, this is the goal. How can we best get there? And what's good in it for you to get there? Like, so, then it's a win-win. And that's what I'm focused on, because otherwise I wouldn't feel good in myself if I was the winning party and the other one was losing. So my goal is always like to create a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And do you find yourself like people go to you, naturally because they know they can talk to you because you're open?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
funny. That's a perk.
And then that's it. So we have, like we're good listeners, and because we have empathy. Well, people come to us that they know they can trust us, and that I think that's valuable too.
Yeah. Wow, great. Thanks a lot, Patricia, for this eye-opening conversation. So I knew a few things, but this is like when you just started to share your experience, my whole childhood was in front of me. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. And if I can add, that's one more tool I'd say, like once you've discovered and you've accepted your highly sensitivity, connect with others. Highly sensitive people aren't so much on social media because it's very overwhelming, but there are a few groups here and there. There's a good podcast to listen to, and just to get into like a community of other highly sensitive person, just to validate what you're feeling, what you're going through, just to be encouraged to use it.
Yeah, it's like with every community. I think that's always a perk. Even when you're in coding, and I'm also part of chanting group, right? So it's just that whenever you connect with people who are like-minded, there is more acceptance. And then you see the diversity within those groups as well. And that makes you, more curious. And then you want to figure out, oh, maybe that's the thing. That's what's happening. And that's like learning from each other, and that's always the goal at the end of a community, to build together and support each other. So
yes, and you feel empowered and you can just go out there and be yourself.
thank you so much, Patricia, for your time,
You're
and
welcome.
we will definitely share the links below. And thanks a lot again for this conversation, and I look forward to speak to you again.
My pleasure, Nidhi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Until next time. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye.